The Twilight Zone is widely known for its shocking twist endings and its reality-bending what-if scenarios. But the truly great episodes combine the surprising in the original with strong character moments and a satisfying narrative. The Last Flight from the first season of The Twilight Zone in 1959 is one of the most brilliant episodes of science fiction television I've ever seen. While the majority of Twilight Zone episodes were written by series creator Rod Serling, several other writers regularly contributed to the show, the most famous of which being Richard Matheson. He's an incredibly well-respected author whose career spans decades. He's responsible for so many classic stories: I Am Legend, What Dreams May Come, The Legend of Hell House, and A Stir of Echoes, which is a personal favorite of mine because I love the movie adaptation with Kevin Bacon. I used to watch it with my mom all the time. It was kind of our movie. Many of Matheson's short stories were turned into Twilight Zone episodes, and his Season 1 story, The Last Flight, is simply a masterclass in storytelling. Unlike some episodes that were only based on Matheson's short stories, The Last Flight was actually written by Matheson for The Twilight Zone. Matheson's episodes not only tend to be more compelling stories, but they have better dialogue and even better direction and camera work sometimes. So, The Last Flight tells the story of a British World War I fighter pilot named Terry Decker out on a two-man patrol in 1979 when he finds himself in a thick white cloud that renders him not only unable to see but to even hear. After emerging from the cloud, he lands at what he was expecting to be 56 Squadron RFC, which would be a base in France. Instead, he's surprised to be received by American soldiers at a base that has aircraft far more advanced than anything the British had imagined.
Can't you see this is an American base?
But all this? We had no idea you were so advanced.
A Major Wilson insists he comes with him, as Terry admires the amazing technology of this American base and expresses what looks to be surprise at a female officer walking about. Terry steps into the office of Major General Harper and stands at attention. Such a display of formality seeming to kinda put off the general. Harper smiles, not really knowing what to think of what he sees before him. Upon asking Terry who he is, Terry responds,
Second Lieutenant William Terence Decker, sir, Royal Flying Corps.
You mean Royal Air Force?
No, sir, Royal Flying Corps.
Harper wants to know why he's here and why he's dressed in this costume. Is there an air show in town? Are they filming a movie? Terry apparently has no idea what these things even are. This leads to an awkward silence, followed by Major Wilson asking Terry for the date. He says, March the 5th, 1917.
It's March the 5th, 1959, Lieutenant.
Terry is trying to process this insane information, knowing that they aren't joking. He takes a seat to process it all. Has he really jumped forward in time? Terry approaches the window and looks up at the cloud he came from, recounting how he couldn't hear his engine, like he was caught in a vacuum. He remembers an old story the soldiers used to tell, that of a French fighter pilot who disappeared in a similar way. General Harper isn't buying any of this, surely it's some kind of joke. But Terry swears that he was up there with his flying partner Alexander Mackay in 1917. But Harper interrupts him to say that he personally knows Alexander Mackay and he's the current Air Vice Marshal. He's en route to come inspect the base at this very moment. Terry says that's impossible.
Why is it impossible? Because he's dead.
In the next scene, we see Wilson and Harper sorting through Terry's personal belongings, and upon my recent viewings of this episode, this has become one of the most interesting moments to me from a script writing perspective, because you could say there's a bit of a plot hole here. If this pilot Terry Decker is who he says he is, all the general would have to do is make a call to someone higher up and ask for the information to be verified. The episode's mystery would be resolved quickly, and the tension of the episode would be broken. Now, it is 1959, and there's bureaucracy to deal with, so verifying Terry's identity would probably be a delayed process, I imagine, but it could be done. This is the general's first reason for not looking into it. He thinks it would be a big waste of time. He also says that he's sure this is a hoax, even though Major Wilson finds it very hard to believe that anyone would go to such elaborate lengths just to play a joke. There's gotta be more going on here. But General Harper says this is not a simple joke. As he unloads Terry's pistol, he says that he suspects Terry might be an assassin. Maybe this whole story is a way to get close to Air Marshal Mackay to kill him. Wilson dismisses the idea, saying that if he wanted to kill Mackay, he wouldn't have left his pistol in the plane, he would have carried it with him. And Terry sounded genuinely shocked when he heard Mackay was coming to the base. It just doesn't make sense. The tension between these officers and the idea that Terry might be an assassin is a brilliant way to cover up the potential plot hole of them just being able to solve this mystery with a phone call. Not only would it be a long process to verify Terry's records, but Harper's suspicion that Terry might be an assassin leads him to the logical conclusion that it could be dangerous to allow this information to escape this room. Maybe the assassination plot goes up the line of authority. A phone call could tip someone off. It's a beautiful and subtle way of keeping logical consistency for this fantastical premise. I only really picked up on it around the third time I watched it, but it's so smart. It's these kinds of details that set Richard Matheson's stories apart from those of other writers. So Terry is being held as a prisoner, and knowing that Mackay is on the way, he protests against the idea of seeing him. But Wilson wants to get them together, and after a short bit of arguing, Terry agrees. Wilson inquires more about the white cloud, and the unbelievable idea that he could be from the past. Terry becomes agitated by all the questions and takes a seat. He starts reminiscing about Mackay, his friend and flying partner. He refers to him as Old Lead Bottom, a name given to him by the other pilots after he got wounded in the ass during a flight over German lines. It was a private joke to call him Old Lead Bottom. He'd be embarrassed if that joke got out. Terry goes on to tell Wilson that he's sure Mackay is dead because the last time he saw him, they were both in a fight with German planes, 7 surrounding Mackay and Terry dealing with another 3. There's no way Mackay could have survived, but Wilson says he must have. He went on to be one of Britain's greatest heroes. In World War II, he saved thousands of lives by taking out several German bombers over London. This news sets Terry off for some reason, and he tries to escape. He's stopped, and now he's gotta unburden his soul. He simply can't bear to face Mackay when he comes, because he'll know Terry for what he truly is, a coward. He's always been a coward. He's only here because he was running away. He left his friend to die as he flew away to save himself. That landed him in the cloud, and now the friend he abandoned, who actually survived somehow, is gonna be here soon, and Terry can't face him. Facing Alexander Mackay would be facing how much of a coward Terry really is. He was never brave like the other pilots. Whenever he went up with Mackay to patrol, he would hang back. Knowing Mackay was looking for a fight, Terry could stay out of trouble. Terry even shot bullet holes into his own plane once to convince the other pilots he'd seen action in the sky. How can a coward like Terry face the man he abandoned, who went on to become the kind of war hero he could never be? But it doesn't make sense. 2 pilots against 10? Terry ran away to save himself. How could Mackay have possibly survived against those odds? Wilson says, well, maybe he got help somehow. Terry has the idea that, yeah, maybe Mackay did get help, and maybe it was from him. What if he's supposed to go back? What if the only reason Mackay survived was because his friend Terry Decker showed up to save him? There was no one else around who could have helped him, so maybe he's here for a reason.
Maybe I was brought here for a purpose. To find out that Mac had survived. To find out that time was giving me a second chance.
He's alive. He's coming here today.
How do you know that? How do you know that if I don't get back, he won't be here?
Terry sees there's no way to convince Wilson of the idea, so he knocks him out and forces his way out of the holding area. He bolts across the base looking for his plane, and Wilson comes to and sets out to stop Terry. Terry makes it to the runway, and I just want to point out some awesome detail here. First, Terry is exhausted from the sprint, which is a cool touch of realism because he's not a ground soldier, he's a pilot, so he's not in the shape needed to run like this, I guess. Second, he actually has to spin up the propeller of his old plane. I think most people telling this story would just have him get in the plane and have the propeller start on its own. And I just love that we see Terry go through the old process of manually spinning it up. winding up his leg and using the force of his whole body to get it up to speed. It's so cool. Of course, this lengthy process allows Wilson to catch up to him before he's able to take off. Terry tells Wilson that this isn't just about Mackay, it's about the thousands of people he goes on to save. Are they to be lost as well? Wilson threatens to shoot him if he doesn't turn off the plane.
Oh, fire! I'd rather die.
Wilson lets Terry go, and he dramatically flies up into the sky, into the clouds, disappearing into the same white cloud he came from. Back in the office, General Harper is scolding Wilson for letting Terry escape. He's in big trouble, but they're interrupted by a knock at the door. Air Marshal Mackay is here, already at the General's office. They go through the formalities of their introductions, and right away Wilson starts asking about Terry Decker. Mackay is startled to hear the name. It's been a long time.
I certainly should know him. Saved my life.
What?
He tells the story of the day he and Terry were out on patrol when German planes swooped in on them. He saw his friend Terry fly away, thinking he'd abandoned him. Wilson interrupts to ask if he flew into a white cloud.
I don't know. I suppose so.
But he says Terry came right back into the fight, out of nowhere. He took out 3 fighters before he went down himself. Terry died saving his life.
Then he did get back.
Harper asks if it was a common practice for the Germans to return the personal belongings of any pilot shot down. Mackay says yes, and demands to know what this is all about, but does go on to confirm to Harper that the Germans never sent back Terry's items. Harper takes out the envelope containing Terry's stuff and gives it to Mackay. His ID, his medals.
Where in heaven's name did you get these?
Mackay demands an explanation, and Wilson says he'd better sit down.
Maybe you'd better sit down, old lead bottom.
What did you call me?
The episode ends as Harper, the skeptic, looks out the window, up at the clouds above, knowing something just happened here that'll never be explained. The Last Flight by Richard Matheson is an episode that gets better and better every time I watch it. I've showed it to a lot of friends lately. I think it's a perfect story. It's great for the Twilight Zone because it has the mysterious premise, and while it's not a twist ending, it is a great revelation of the situation to everyone involved at the end. But what really sets this episode apart from the rest of the Twilight Zone is the incredible character journey. The Last Flight isn't just about a crazy phenomenon, or a message about society, or a twist ending. It's about a man dealing with a lifetime of cowardice, fighting against the skepticism of the officers that hold him in captivity, and coming to the realization that he must finally be a brave man, that it is his fate to save his friend, and therefore save thousands. Fear be damned. A lifelong coward fights his way out swinging his fists, facing a potential bullet in the brain before he takes off, saying he'd rather die than continue being a coward and go against his fate as being the hero for his friend. It's a beautiful story, one that could be retold today in a new movie if you got the right people to do it and expand on the events and characters. We could get to know Harper and Wilson some more. You could add another character. There's a lot you could do. You could have Terry go home and reunite with his wife and child, whom he hasn't seen in 40 years, discovering a new life and a new world, coming to the revelation much later about Mackay, and now he's not just sacrificing his life to go back and save him, he's also leaving his family behind after they just got him back. You could really flesh this story out. Whereas I think a lot of Twilight Zone episodes tend to drag on and outstay the potential of their premise, The Last Flight is so rich and full of ideas that it almost feels too short. I just don't want it to end, which means it probably is the perfect length. Adding greatly to the quality of the episode is the fantastic direction and the intense, believable performances. Every episode of The Twilight Zone tends to have a different director, of varying degrees of experience and talent, but The Last Flight got William F. Claxon for it, a man with a decade in the industry directing films and a lot of television. The difference in directorial quality is obvious when compared to many other episodes. It feels like a late 1950s movie instead of a TV episode. Claxon expertly crafts dialogue scenes to be filled with tension, well-timed close-ups, keeping characters in frame during dramatic moments. Characters naturally engage with each other instead of just exchanging lines, with moments of interruption occurring like they would in real life. I struggle a little bit to talk about these cinematic aspects. I'm no expert, but I can feel it when I watch it. The performances, the camera work, the pacing, it's all so obviously on another level. This episode was handled with special care, and you have to give credit to Kenneth William Michael Hay, I don't know how to say his last name. His performance is unmatched in season 1 of The Twilight Zone, coming from the theater stage in London, eventually making it to Broadway in the late 1950s. He brings an expressive, emotional touch to the character, and he knows how to move around the scenes naturally. He'd also played a pilot in a film 3 years before, so I guess he easily slipped into the role for the episode. Thank you for watching this breakdown of my favorite Twilight Zone episode. If you haven't seen it already, check out my full season 1 breakdown covering all 36 episodes from the original series, the good and the bad. Like and subscribe, comment, check out the rest of my stuff, and learn from Terry Decker. Choose the right path when it's in front of you, and have no fear.